So this is the second section on surds and indices, so we're not doing indices anymore, we're just looking at rationalising surds because I didn't have time to fit it in the last video. If you're wondering how that's possible, the video capture software I've got is free, but it's only able to go in 5-minute little chunks, so if I'm going to run out of that time, I have to end and start a new video. But for long videos I can piece it all together, but that's quite a lot of effort for these short ones, so it's easier to just do 2 separate videos. So for rationalising the surd, we want to look at something like this, a over root b. Now what does rationalising mean? Rationalising means basically getting all the square roots on the top of the fraction, because dividing by a square root looks a bit weird and mathematicians don't like the notation, so we get rid of it. So how do we get rid of it? Effectively we times the whole thing by 1. Timesing it by 1 keeps it as the same, it doesn't change the value of the fraction, but by timesing it by 1 we times it by root b over root b. So root b over root b is 1, so it doesn't change the fraction, but we times the top bit by root b and the bottom bit also by root b. And in doing so we get a root b at the top here, and the root b times the root b at the bottom just gets b. So we've got a root b over b. If we look at a quick example of that, 5 over root 3, what do we times it by? We times it by root 3 over root 3. So then we've got 5 root 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom, and it's a nicer form. It also means if you've got something like 1 over root 2, you times it by root 2 over 2, sorry, root 2 over root 2, and that means a better way of writing 1 over root 2 would be root 2 over 2. Now if we've got something that looks a little bit more complicated like this, then we use a method that you've probably picked up in GCSE, but it's something that no one likes and no one really remembers. They try and forget it as soon as they can. It's called difference of 2 squares. So if you do difference of 2 squares, so the same thing as this but with a negative sign instead of a plus, then you don't have a middle term, and not having a middle term is important. So again we times it by 1 like this, which is the b minus c root d. And now we've got this kind of thing on the bottom. Now this is like a quadratic equation, but by having a negative here, we're going to end up with a sort of factorising it out, we'll get a b squared and a minus c root d all squared, because if you have a minus here, this times b minus c root d will get minus bc root d, and this times the plus c root d will get bc root d, and then the minus and the plus will cancel out, which means you won't have a square root anymore, because you'll get something that looks like this, and when you square that then you won't have a square root anymore, like so, and then your square root's on the top, not the bottom. So to look at an example, see if it looks any simpler. So we've got 6 over 3 plus root 7, so we times it by 3 minus root 7 over 3 minus root 7, and just factorising the numbers out, we get 18 minus 6 root 7 on the top, and we get 9 squared plus root 7 minus root 7, which becomes 0, and then root 7 times minus root 7 gets us the minus 7, and then it's divided by 2. You can simplify that down further to 9 minus 3 root 7. Just taking out a factor of 2's from the top. So that's everything for rationalising surds. The best thing to do is to get a bit of practice on the more complicated ones where the bottom of the fraction doesn't look very nice. Just keep practicing it, and once you've got the technique of timesing it by 1, then you're pretty much sorted. So if you've got any questions or want another example, then just ask in the comments or send me a message. And if you want any other videos that aren't on my channel yet, something that you don't understand, then just send me a message and I'll try and get it done for you as soon as possible.